To my modest railway layout, Bedstead Junction. We're looking across at the locomotive we'll be talking about tonight, which is an 060 Collett goods. Now, there were 120 of these built from about 1924. That's when Collett would have taken over, to about 1948. They were useful engines. They numbered 120 in the end, and they were designed to be a replacement for the Dean goods. In fact, William Dean was the predecessor to Churchward. So the Dean goods, even by the 1920s, have been around for quite a long time. And the Dean goods are a story all of their own. But tonight we're going to be talking about the Collett goods. Now, they had an interesting history, both as the real locomotive and the and as in the model form, like we're going to be seeing tonight. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to reverse her out of the station first of all. So nice and gentle, he's nice and easy. That's it. Whoops. You see, she's not bad, is she? And we'll talk about the locomotive while we're looking at it. Here we are, so just reverse out of the station. It's an 060 tender engine, so it's got 6 driving wheels, no leading wheels, no trailing wheels, so just an 060. Okay, and it was designed for medium freight duties, but they did actually pull passenger trains as well, as you can see here. Now, the actual model itself is produced by a company called Mainline, and they stopped producing locomotives in 1984. That's when the parent company called Palitoy decided to finish manufacturing of them. And of course, they did carry on with the factory from Hong Kong, and they carry on even to this day as Bachmann, under the Bachmann brand. But the Palitoy parted company in 1984. Now, this locomotive, as far as the model was concerned, was launched by Mainline in around about 1977. I should imagine this is when it came from. I actually bought this locomotive in around about 1991, 1992. It was when I first became really interested in railways and model railways. And that happened when I was actually in my early 30s, believe it or not. Before then, I had other interests. And it was when I began to travel by rail in connection with my work that my interest in railways came about, and I started to watch programs about steam railways that happened to be on the television at the time, and that's where my interest grew. Now, this is one of the very, very first locomotives I ever bought. I bought this second hand in a shop that was used to be in Bedminster in Bristol, called Trains of Bristol. Ran by a gentleman called Derek, and it was there that I got a lot of my advice in my early model railway career. It was one of those traditional model railway shops. I'd already been on a preserve railway. I think I'd been on the West Somerset Railway, and on the West Somerset Railway was Collett goods number 3205, and in fact this is a model of Collett goods 3205, and there it was in the glass case, and I had to have it. It was quite cheap at the time. Quite cheap. Remember, this is 1992, and now, looking at this now, this is a 40-plus-year-old engine, I should imagine, as in the model form. It was unboxed, and also the previous owner had altered it. It used to carry the Great Western livery, but he'd actually altered it and customised it to be the early British Rail Western Region livery. You can see down there the unicycling lion. In fact, it would have said on the original model Great Western, and in fact you can still see it quite faintly on the tender if you look really, really closely. The motor on these protrudes a little bit into the cab, but that's one of the sort of like things you had to have on modern railways of the time. This has got something called a pod motor inside. It's very, very similar to a lot of the later mainline models. And we'll talk a little bit more about this one as it's going round. So what we'll do now, we'll just give it some juice in a minute. we're going to check the points so we don't go racing down the siding. That's it. And away we go. Right away. Pulls away quite smoothly. Now, I've quite recently repaired this locomotive. It was a little bit stiff after I did it, after I actually finished servicing in it. I had to take it apart. What happened was, as it was going around the track, it started to produce its own smoke effect. Plumes of smoke, a great big plume of smoke coming out of it, and it would stop. Then it would go again for a while, and then it would stop and go again for a while. And so I stripped it right down. It's a split chassis model, mainline models were, and the advantage of that was that there's no wires in these, so I knew it couldn't be any wiring that had burnt out, and it had to be something to do with the motor. Now what it turned out to be, either I did it back in the early 90s or a previous owner had, and it had been over oiled. And when I took it apart, in fact a lot of the inside of the motor was black, and the whole thing just needed taking apart and cleaning. And as you can see now, it's running fine. Absolutely fine, look at that. It's putting one coach tonight, and this is a mainline brake coach, which I bought during the lockdown. And as you see, you can go around the track quite nicely. You can slow it down, speed it up. Now, a pretty good test of a locomotive is how it goes over points. And so we'll slow her right down and we'll take her over the point. There we are, over the point with no stuttering whatsoever. So that means that all the wheels are making good contact with the motor that's inside this locomotive. And I've spoken out about these before, because we've seen mainline manufactured model locomotives on the track before. And what happens is that the motor sits on top of the chassis, and in fact there's electrical contacts going to each side of the chassis. The chassis is insulated from each other on each side, and the current goes to one side through the chassis, through the motor and down the other side, without there being any wires. And the wheels sit directly in the chassis, and that's how they make the contact. Let's just give it a bit more juice again. Now, why it's important for your locomotive to go well over points is because you don't want to have to sort of rev it up before you go over points on a siding, because you can in fact end up derailing the train, as I've done on a number of occasions. So it's worth taking, if the locomotive isn't going over points properly, sometimes it's worth trying to clean everything up and see how it's going. And if you've got a conventional style locomotive, they'll have actual pickups on the wheels. These have got no pickups at all on these, but check all the pickups and all the contacts, and see if you can get it to go over points nice and smoothly. Because what you don't want to have to do is, say, for it to stutter on points, you have to rev it up over the points like this, and then slow it back down again once you get into the siding. Okay, that's and this one does it really well. Like I say, it's one of the first locomotives I ever bought, Model locomotives. And also back in the early 1990s, you've seen this before, in the same shop I bought this controller. Okay, so there we are. So that's the Collett goods. Now this is the only one that was preserved 3205. Say, I actually rode behind this one on the West Somerset Railway. Now, even though it's a Great Western locomotive, it did find it. They did find their way onto the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway after the Western region of British Rail took over the Somerset and Dorset. I think the Somerset and Dorset went over to Western region ownership in 1959, and then some of these Collett goods were transferred over onto the branch between Evercreech Junction and high bridge and burn them on sea. And I do believe this is one of the locomotives that actually works on the Somerset and Dorset. So like I say, it's got, as in the real locomotive terms, it's got a really interesting history, and as in model form, it's got an interesting history. Now, would these models hold up against a lot of the super detailed models of today? Detail wise, possibly not, okay, but with the construction of these locomotives comes many benefits, okay, many benefits, and I'll tell you this now why. We'll put her in and we'll just see. Now you can see the 060 wheel arrangement there, the tender. Got the rather silvery handrails. I don't think you'll see that on a modern model locomotive, but remember, this is from 1977, so it's got the representation of the safety valve cover and the copper chimney. That's a good representation there. The cab, like I said, is got the motor coming into it partially, but this one has in the past had a loco crew in here, and I'm going to put another loco crew in, because what that does is that hides the motor. You can see the back of the motor there, but it hides it, and you can see that some of these other details here, like the handles on the tender, they're slightly thicker than what you would see on a modern railway locomotive, but again, is the benefits of durability. Nothing has ever fallen off this locomotive. I remember it's from 1977 and it's intact. Okay, so that maybe is one of the benefits of getting one of the older locomotives, that you're not going to be afraid to run it on the track. Okay, there is a period of time where companies like Hornby did manage to strike, in my view, a balance between detail and durability, and there has to be that. I think there has to be that kind of a balance struck. You can see on here as well rather large lumps of coal. You would see that if the fireman had to throw those lumps of coal in like that size, he'd have to be working quite hard just to lift one lump on the shovel, I reckon. But again, that's all parts of having an older style locomotive. You can still get Collett goods mainline on eBay second hand. Of course, there's no new ones out unless you buy the Bachmann version. Bachmann did actually make a version of this as well. Okay, the coach is mainline, and this is exactly the same as a replica railways coach or a Bachmann coach. Now, even though on the bottom this one says mainline underneath it, a Bachmann coach of the same, which come out just afterwards, is basically identical. Okay, so the 60-foot Collett is identical. Now, we'll just take her around a little bit. Again, she does need quite a turn on the controller, but bear in mind we're talking about a locomotive that could have been from 1977. Okay, she's running really well. Let's slow her right down on the point. We'll just take her around the point now. Pointing up there. Now, if there was anything wrong with his performance on points, at that speed it would have stalled, or you would have heard it stutter. And as you see, it runs perfectly well on points. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll change the points over, and we're going to talk again about one of the other recent locomotives. Well, not recent, but one of the earliest, locomotives I ever bought. And we're looking at it now, and we'll just see, and then we can compare a more modern representation. The two locomotives that you can see in the main station there are Hornby. I think we'll get my words muddled up tonight. Let's have a look and see now. Oh, right. Okay, so we'll just take her in. Let's just slow her right down. over the points like that, nice and slow. There we are, that's perfect. So we're into our little halt station there by the goods shed. I was going to run a goods train tonight, so that's why the goods shed is out, but I've not done that. I was going to do a review of the Dean Goods locomotive, but you'll have to see that another time. Now, the other locomotive we're going to talk about tonight is going to be this one here, the green one. And it's a Hornby King. And you may sort of think to yourself, well, okay, it looks a bit different. And it is. And I'll explain to you how it's different. And something again about the history of this particular locomotive. Now, it's got a double chimney. And it didn't have that to start with. Okay. Also, it would have been in Great Western livery. Okay, and this is King Edward I. Now, at the time these were around, the Hornby version was in Great Western livery. Now, I saw this King in the glass case at Trains of Bristol back in the early 1990s, and I inquired about it, and this one was originally the original Hornby version from around about 1977, I think it came out. But it's been really heavily remodelled and recustomised. This person put an awful lot of hard work into converting this locomotive into a representation of a Hornby King class as it would have been under British Rail ownership in the Great Western region, the Western region of British Rail. It's the person who did this changed the steam pipes out of the lamps, fitted a double chimney, changed the livery, removed the Great Western wording and replaced it with the unicycling lion crest there. It's a tender powered locomotive, so the ring foot motor is actually in the tender here, as Hornby locomotives were at that time. So basically this just freewheels and is being pushed along by the tender. Okay, now bear in mind again, I bought this in the early 1990s. Okay, so that's about 30 years ago. Getting on now for 30 years ago. And this locomotive again runs fine. Now, you saw the mainline locomotive over there running well after a good clean. And I fixed the motor. I also fitted new brushes and springs in the mainline locomotive. But this one here, I've never had to touch. Except, I've removed the tender top. And there's a lot of gears and cogs going down to the wheels from the ring foot motor. And I give those the occasional oiling every now and again. But really and I've oiled the axles, but apart from that, I've not had to touch it in all the time I've had it. And bear in mind, this was probably again manufactured in the 1970s. And it still goes. Now let's have a look now. Let's change the points. And we'll have a look at her. We'll just see now. I think we appear to have this. Now, we'll just check everything's going properly. We'll take her out nice and slowly. Actually, not bad really. I mean, considering that the age of the locomotive, you can see it's you can move it nice and steadily. Yes, you can hear the motor. I know. But that's all part of the appeal, I think, of running an older locomotive. Again, over the points. Look, no hiccups, no stalling. Perfect. And if you wanted to have a lot of detail, especially to a Hornby locomotive at the time, you would have had to have customised it in this way. I mean, there was no, as far as I'm aware, Hornby did not make a king in British Royal livery back in the day when I bought this. So like I said, the person who wanted a British Rail king, as it would have been in the 1950s, and he went to an awful lot of hard work customizing this locomotive. I think he also let's bring it around a little bit. We can see there he changed the steam pipes. See, new steam pipes. Imagine this represents hours of work, and you can look at that. I know it's partly in shadow, but we'll bring it around a little bit more. Look, moves away nice and smoothly. Look at that. Now, an addition I made to it was I added the crew. You can see the crew in there, the driver and the fireman. I like to add a crew to my locomotives. Just add a bit of realism. You don't get a painted cab with these, but that is something which obviously is of the time. But once you actually put the crew in, you will actually bring the footplate to life. Okay, so there we go. So got the nice side windows on it. The coal load isn't too bad for its time. I think it's a little bit dusty on there, is why it looks a bit grey, but the coal load for its time doesn't look too bad either as a model. And let's watch it go round. This is the heaviest and biggest of the 460s made by the Great Western Railway, designed by Charles Benjamin Collett. And it was a result of a kind of an arms race, really, between the Great Western Railway and other railways. And this was all about having the most powerful 460 locomotive. Now, Collett had designed the Castle class of locomotive, which is the far more numerous version, and at the time that was the most powerful locomotive, but it was trumped, at least in theoretical tractive effort, by the Southern Railway's Lord Nelson class. Now the Great Western Railway just couldn't let that happen, and so the Kings were built. A much heavier and bigger version of the Castle. It's a 460 again, but it trumped the Lord Nelson class and re-established the Great Western's position as having the most powerful 460 locomotive. Now, the only thing about that was, of course, is that because of their size and their weight, there was a route limitation as to where they can actually go. They can only run on the heaviest built of main lines, and in fact when these were going on an express to Plymouth, they were not allowed to go beyond Plymouth. They were not allowed onto the Royal Albert's Bridge, and other locomotives had to take over. And in fact in the 1950s, believe this or not, the Britannia class Pacific locomotives were used quite a lot. They go on into Cornwall, along with other Great Western locomotives that were light enough to go over the bridge. And only 30 were built of these, and they were all withdrawn in 1962. I mean, by then they were beginning to show their age, and also the decision had been made to replace the steam engines with diesel engines. And Diesel Day was going to be at the end of 1965, when the Western region would be purged of all steam locomotives. Now, a lot of people say that's quite sad. But I think what one of the benefits was, at least some of these made it into preservation. If they were slowly one by one withdrawn and scrapped, then maybe the class would have disappeared without there being any preserved. In fact, this one is preserved, King Edward I. You can hear it going round. Coaches are clunking a bit over the points, but there we go. Or maybe the tender, I don't know. But if you can imagine these heading out of Paddington on the way to the to Plymouth, putting the Cornish Riviera Express. Or taking the holiday maker to Torquay, Paignton, Kingswear and Dartmouth. Although to get to Dartmouth you needed to go by ferry. And of course they would have been running along the seawall at Dawlish and Teignmouth. They would have been photographed on many occasions going through, I think it's 7 tunnels that were along there. So I should imagine these made quite a sight. If you were in Dawlish on the beach, you can actually see the trains going by. You imagine one of these thundering through the station. Now, these were replaced by the warship and the Western class diesel hydraulics, which we will get to see at some other stage. I do have a small diesel fleet as well, which includes these locomotives. But today we're going to be concentrating on the Kings. And it was said by many that once these had been fitted with a double chimney, which you can see there, the double chimney, they gave some of their best performances. The double chimney also enabled the locomotives to be run on lower quality coal. Now, up until the 1950s, the train was probably the main way in which people went to the seaside. But probably from about the 1930s onwards, I'm just going to check that joint in the rails there. Now it's come apart slightly. Yeah, this track goes away every night and comes back out in the mornings, and so it can you do get the odd loose fish plates, and I do need to replace them. But it does mean that at least my layout's mobile and I can put it away at the end of the night. Okay, so that's an example really of if you wanted to get detail and you wanted to have a British Rail version of this back in the day when this was rebuilt by its previous owner, then you would have had to have customised it yourself. Now I did have a Great Western version of this as well, King Edward I, but I actually let it go back in the early 1990s because I was actually modelling British Rail after nationalisation. Well, the Great Western after nationalisation. Even though these are Great Western coaches. Here we go. Let's bring it around to the station now. And you can see what I mean about performance over points, why that's very important. Okay, so we can just check the points are set. And then we can move on to the last locomotive that's on our tracks tonight. We'll have a brief look at that as well. Okay, so we'll bring her in. Nice and slowly does it. You can see literally going over the points without me needing to touch the controller. I can set the controller at the speed I want it to come in at. There we are, the King, the Great Western Railway King. Now, the next locomotive we're looking at is a bit more modern. Well, modern for me anyway, for my modern railway locomotive collection. and it's Derwent's Grange. Now this is the King class there and the main line weren't boxed. They didn't come with boxes or leaflets, so we've got no information on them or whatsoever. But this Grange class, 6800 Grange class, it was boxed when I bought it, and it was in excellent condition. It's probably come from someone's prized collection. I bought this on eBay during the lockdown. Derwent's Grange. One of a class of 80 locomotives, again built to be able to go on to railways where certain weight limits were in force. Okay, one of the main advantages of a Grange was that they had slightly smaller wheels, and that allowed it to have good performance pulling up hills. Okay, unfortunately none of the Granges were preserved. Although I think somebody somewhere is trying to build a Grange. I think somebody somewhere is trying to build quite a lot of the extinct classes of Great Western locomotives. Now this model, even though I say it's a more modern version, is our 2403, and it's July 2005. Okay, so this is 15 or 16 years old as well. But again, it's in pristine condition. I love it. Look at that. It was boxed up. The box was mint. Because I've got the box, I can show you. Sorry about the camera work. I'm trying to grab poor things. I'm supposed to be getting a tripod, but it's not come through the post yet, so it should help me keep everything a bit more still. There you are. So that's the Hornby Grange class on there on the outer box. DCC ready. And on the back there is the history of it. If you can read that. But anyway, there we go. That's in focus now. So if you want to freeze frame that, you can have a read on that later. It was built in February 1939, allocated to Wolverhampton, Oxley, and withdrawn in June 1965. And it was scrapped at Birds at Bridgend. Okay, if it would have gone to Di Woodham's yard in Barry, there's every good chance it could have been preserved. But some of these, the Di Woodham story, if you look him up, Di Woodham, okay, Barry, and that's where a lot of the locomotives went, awaiting cutting up, but he never got around to cutting them up, and they just stayed there for years and years and years. And various preservation societies were able to come along and chalk on the side, please don't scrap me. And they were safe, but unfortunately none of the Granges were, even though they were very, very useful locomotives. Now we'll have a look at in more detail. So BR Black, so that would have been a lot of the early locomotives like this, mixed traffic, would have been produced in black. Again, it's got the early crest, unicycling lion. See the plate there, Derwent Grange. Okay, and it's 6862, and the route classification is Route D. You can clearly see the 460 wheel arrangement there. So you've got 4 leading wheels. Well, one of the wheels is just back there, but you can see it there. They've got the 6 driving wheels and no wheels under the cab. And it's a much more, this is my opinion, just my opinion. I've got quite a few locomotives from the early 2000s, 2005. And I reckon this was one of Hornby's finest hours as far as producing railway locomotives. Okay, nothing has fallen off this locomotive, nothing. It's perfect. It's got separately fitted darts, that's still perfect. Sprung buffers, see that there, sprung buffers, which a lot of people make a lot of. They say that sort of like points it out as a premium locomotive. I'll have a look and see what I've never looked at the motor of this one, because I've never had to take it to bits. I bought this during the lockdown. Okay, whereas so these I've had for many years, the King and the Collett. Let's have a look and see if we've got anything here. Just trying to see if it gives me any idea about the motor. Sorry about the camera, dreadful camera work. Oh, there are, there's a picture of it. So it does give you the instructions how to replace the motor there, should it ever need replacement. Okay, so my guess is these are one of these sealed for life motors, and if it should go wrong, you'll need to replace the whole thing. Whereas one of the advantages of the older ones, which is the ring field here, the tender and the mainline locomotive, you can take these motors to pieces and replace the brushes and springs and give it a good clean up, and usually they're good to go. Right, so let's have a look then. We'll have a brief look at Derwent's Grange. It's a nice quiet runner. We'll do the points once again, and we'll just see. Derwent Grange. There we are. Again, nice control. All these three of these locomotives got very good control on points. No stuttering. You don't want to really have to charge these over the points. You know, if your locomotive stutters, try and see if you can do something to cure it. Then you'll have far better control, especially on a small layout like this, because I've not got very much room on here. And of course, the smallest error on the controller, I'm off the edge of the layout there. Okay, so here we go. So we'll take her out now, runner. Very popular with the crews. In fact, most of the Great Western locomotives were popular with their crews. So these could be either putting passengers or freight. They can actually be put on almost any duty which they perform without complaint. There we are. What a lovely locomotive. Again, a lot of the details are a lot finer on it. So you saw that the thicker sort of brake handles and everything else on the tenders. This is a lot more finer details, but it seems to have again sort of got that compromise right between detail and durability. It seems nothing's fallen off. I've got confidence in this locomotive. We'll have a little look and we'll just see if there's any other things we can talk about regarding it. We saw the separately fitted dart. Okay, we'll shine the torch on here now. Okay, and we'll just see. I'm not sure if there are separately fitted steps on the tender there. I mean, if they are separately fitted, they look very well attached. Nothing's wonky. The cab's detailed. Look at that. A nice bit of detail in the cab there. I don't know if you can see that because the light's gone a bit too. There we are. See the detail in the cab there now. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. See the red the reversing rod picked up in red. So the reversing lever. Got the seats in there. The dials we even picked out, and I can't show you this because it's a little bit difficult to see with this lighting I've got now. I need to improve my lighting. Please excuse the flashing. That's a torch. But even the dials are picked up. I've just looked in now, and I've never closely looked in the cab before this. Even the dials are picked up on this. So Derwent Grange, I would say, in my opinion, from 2005, it's a premium model. Premium grade. Okay, so what you've actually seen, you might just see, well, obviously how I got into modern railways and railway enthusiasm. You've actually seen some of the history of the locomotive. So those two locomotives, the King and the main line, were both bought in the early 1990s. And then this locomotive that we see going around now, Derwent's Grange, was actually bought during the lockdown of 2020, in 2020. It's now January 2021, January the 16th. And like I say, I think, you know, with manufacturers like Hornby, you'll, on some of the older Hornby locomotives, and certainly perhaps mainline and others, but perhaps maybe the detail might seem a little bit crude to some people on some of them, but you need to bear in mind these are meant to be played with. They're meant to be run on layout. I mean, if you wanted a model you could sit and admire, why not just have a static one with no motor in it? You can just sit and look at it all day, you know, and admire its detail. But I mean, these are meant to be driven, and you know, even though this Derwent Grange has got wonderful detail on it, also again, it seems to have got that detail and durability balance actually struck. And that's what I love about it. I love this look. I've never regretted buying any of these locomotives here, because they're giving me good service. Now what we'll do is I'll wrap things up tonight, because it's 10:15, and I need to put this away now. Everything can have to go away. Everything goes back into its boxes. And I will be actually, this is where I'll be sleeping tonight. Okay, and I can lie there and dream of my trains going round and round. So it's a lovely hobby, this monorailways. If you've just become interested and you look me up for the first time, then welcome aboard. Okay. If you want to enter this wonderful hobby, there are different ways you can do it. You don't have to spend a fortune. I didn't when I started. You can spend as much as you want to, or need to, or can do. Okay, and if you get half as much enjoyment, I think another person says something similar, but it's a truth. It's a truth. You get half as much enjoyment as I'm getting, then you'll be really having a good time. And you know, and we need people out there to have enjoyment. I hope that my videos, which you'll see if you look me up on Paul Cherry Trains, that's my channel, that these videos might give you some kind of relief from the lockdown. I mean, we've got the vaccine now in January, but I'm waiting. Oh, I'm waiting for Father to get the vaccine, and waiting for me later on. I'm 63, but I think I'm 7th on the list of priorities, so it's going to take a while, I think, before I get the vaccine. I'm staying locked down till I get the vaccine. So I hope that this is going to give us all plenty of pleasure during the lockdown. Okay, and regrettably, I'm having to tear myself away from this. I'm going to have to unplug the controller. And I don't want to, but I have to. Okay, so I bid you farewell and good night. And thank you very much for watching. And if you like, then press like. And if you want to subscribe. And you'll get to see some more videos. And you'll also get to see videos of diesel locomotives. I have one coming up, which, believe it or not, I'm going to be it's going to be having a clanger theme. So if some of you can remember the clangers from the 1970s, the clangers, they lived on a little planet, then I will be bringing up the subject of clangers, or at least one big clanger, in one of my future videos. Okay, so thank you very much, and thank you for watching. Good night.